Nolan can't help himself. His plan to put not only Mark in danger, but possibly the fate of the entire universe. All that and more on this incredibly powerful mid-season finale of... What's up, my know-it-alls? So, you know that epic line from last week that left us all hanging? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Well, guess what? That's the title of this week's episode, and boy, does it pack all the angst and emo action that it is implied. It's like the big dramatic hook of the whole thing, and get this, it's the mid-season finale. We're talking about a break for a few months after this episode. Talk about timing. Nah, let's talk about Nolan, or Omni-Man. He's back, and he's got Mark, our hero Invincible, wrapped up in what's probably the most awkward father-son reunion ever. The tension? It's like a ticking time bomb, getting more intense every minute. Back on Earth, Mark's mom Debbie's having her own big moment. She's like finally seeing things clearly, but it's not all smooth sailing. Her family drama, which is like a soap opera spanning across galaxies, might just stir up more trouble than she bargained for. And let's not forget the heart of the show, the Grayson family drama. It's what makes us all hooked, right? Sure, there are a few side stories that wander off track a bit. They don't always hit the mark, and sometimes feel a bit random. But this week, those side plots take a back seat, making this episode, directed by Jason Zirk, one of the best of season 2. It's like the show's hitting a high note just as we're about to take a break. Can't wait to see what comes next. All right, let's talk tunes for a second. Gabe Hilfer, the music guy for this episode, totally nails it again. He's like the hero we never talk about, but absolutely should. The music plays like a late 90s emo kids playlist, starting with this super moody cover by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds of Leonard Cohen's Avalanche.
I stepped in to an avalanche.
It's playing during the flashback of Nolan leaving Earth, and wow, does it amp up the feels. It actually begins with a sort of ASMR replay of everything Nolan experienced after leaving Earth. He's flying past these wrecked planets in a giant black hole, and that's where the music comes in, and you just feel his guilt and sadness. Then, boom, out of nowhere, there's this busted up Thraxan ship that Nolan swoops in to save. It got caught in the event horizon, rather, of the black hole. So what does Nolan do? He swoops in to save the day, kind of like he's still the good guy he used to pretend to be. And that's how he ends up being the big boss on Thraxa, this planet from these friendly blue bug folks. They don't live very long. It's like any bond Nolan makes there is just temporary. Now the reunion between Nolan and Mark. Talk about drama. Mark's all mixed up. He goes from hugging his dad to yelling at him. It's a whole mess of emotions, the kind he's been trying to ignore all season. But before Mark can storm off, Nolan's like, wait, hear me out. It's for the Thraxans. Then we get this plot twist. Nolan's got a new family on Thraxa. There's Andressa, his Thraxan wife, who Mark thinks is just a stand-in for his mom, and their kid, a cute little purple humanoid who'll outlive this whole planet. With the Viltrumites chasing Nolan because they've learned of his failure, Mark suddenly got a whole lot of anger and betrayal to deal with, like right now. And that's not enough. Nolan drops another bomb. Mark's got a half-brother he never knew about, and he needs to protect the kid from these bad guys who are super against Nolan's mixed species family. So back on Earth, there's this scene with Debbie, right? She's walking around barefoot, looking all lost and sad. And guess what's playing in the background?
I'd still kill for you, I'd die to spend the night at your belongings.
Blonde Shell by Olympus. And yeah, big bad ups to Gabe, the music guy for this pick. It's like Debbie's doing this walk of shame, but it's more about her feeling rejected. See, she's been kicked out of her support group, the one for superhero spouses, all because she was married to Nolan, who's, let's face it, isn't winning any Husbands of the Year awards. Then Debbie goes and visits Nolan's empty grave.
I never knew you at all, did I? I never even
knew you.
Like, it literally represents all the lies about who he really is, and it's also a reminder of how much pain she's in. Remember how Mark said she was called Nolan's pet? Yeah, that's gotta sting. In the middle of all this, Art shows up, voiced by Mark Hamill, which is pretty cool, but their chat isn't as big a deal as what comes next. Debbie meets up with Cecil, tries to give him all of Nolan's sci-fi books. It's like she's trying to dump all the weight of Nolan's secrets and move on. It's a pretty powerful moment, showing how she's trying to let go of everything that's been dragging her down. Okay, so let's chat about the other parts of the story. They're kind of like side dishes that don't quite match up to the main course, you know? Eve is still trying to figure out her superhero gig. She even stops a break-in at the Guardian's place, which turns into this big public throwdown. Then there's Amber and William, who just kind of casually drop a mention about Mark not being around. Now, get this, the Mahler twins. Who survived? All burnt and stuff. Actually, it's the Mahler twin. It's singular. It's just the one. But you know what I'm talking about. The one who survived. He's all burnt and stuff on one side. He makes another clone of himself. This new clone is all fresh and unburnt. But he's got this moment where he's like, I'm not the original. It's kind of sad. But honestly, the whole clone saga isn't grabbing the spotlight much. It's kind of like last season with the robot story. It's interesting, but it's kind of, adrift out there, and it kind of comes in and out of the main action. They even tie up the whole clone thing very much in a neat little bow by the end of the credits, or at least the mid-scene credits. It sort of reflects this other subplot that's actually pretty deep. Donald's going through this big identity crisis. He's starting to wonder if he's even human or alive, especially since Nolan offed him last season. Oh yeah, he manages to get into the surveillance videos and sees for himself when he gave up his life or died, so to speak.
It's been an honor, sir. Who are you talking to?
And then there's this bit from the comics, but they make it a really key part of the show. It's a slow burn, really interesting. It's kind of like Marvel's Agent Coulson's story, if those of you who remember that, but with its own little twist. It dives into how Nolan's actions have affected people like Donald, who's having a similar identity crisis to Debbie and Mark. Plus, it gives us a peek into how far Cecil will go to keep his secrets and get everyone to toe the line. Earth isn't exactly the chill spot we'd hoped it would be. And Mark's got his work cut out for him protecting it. And Nolan, it looks like he's trying to turn over a new leaf too. But then, bam, these Viltrumites show up. They come crashing into Thraxa, and we're thrown into one of those brutal signature battles. I'm talking all out blood and guts. And yeah, someone literally loses their jaw. In the middle of all this chaos, Mark gets a moment to talk with Andressa, Nolan's wife. It's like he's seeing his dad from a whole new perspective, but things don't exactly end on a high note. A Viltrumite tracks down Mark and almost kills him before Nolan shows up and finishes the job. Mark and Nolan rush to face the final two Viltrumites, and Nolan tells Mark he has to stop playing around and try to kill them because they're trying to kill him.
She's trying to kill you, Mark. If you're not trying to kill her, you're going to die.
Mark finally lets loose, and it's like he's Gohan, okay? He's like a Gohan stand-in for this wannabe Dragon Ball Saiyan fight on an alien planet, until Nolan is jumped by the guy he thought he'd killed before. It's a whole thing. Nolan gets captured and hauled back to Viltrum, and they're all set to execute him. Meanwhile, this tough-as-nails General Craig, voiced by Clancy Brown, tells Mark he's got to step into his dad's shoes and prep Earth for an invasion.
You can kill a few humans to convince them to capitulate, or we will kill millions if we arrive to find you or your planet still defiant against us. We will check on your progress soon.
That's family pressure for you. But here's the kicker. Before all that goes down, Nolan hits Mark with some deep advice, kind of cryptic, like he's begging him to remember the good things he did, his work, his deeds, his books.
Read my books, Mark.
Now, is Nolan just being nostalgic about his work, or did he stash some secret tips on beating Viltrum in those books? We're left guessing. Unless, of course, you pick up the comic books and then you know for sure, because I, for one, do. But whatever. Link in the description below. Then there's Debbie, dropping a box of Nolan's books on the sidewalk. Is she accidentally tossing out the key to saving Earth? Maybe. But one thing's for sure, she's moving on from Nolan, letting go of the guy she thought he was. It's like just as Nolan starts to change for the better, she's ready to leave that part of her life behind. And man, isn't that just the definition of tragic? So there you go. Now you know, and if knowing is half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. What's the know-it-all index rating for this episode of Invincible Season 2, Episode 4, the mid-season finale? A strong mid-season finale minimizes the time spent on meandering subplots and really does focus most on that drama, at least the things that works. A returning Omni-Man throws Mark's emotional healing into disarray while Debbie finally learns to move on, though she may not have chosen to do so at the worst possible time. A deft balance of gore and story, basically, in other words, the Invincible formula. It makes this a solid 8 out of 10 for me. What do you think? Comment below. Have you read the comics? If not, check out the link in the description, mainly because this season does feel a little more abridged than I think season 1 felt for me. Have you noticed? Do you care? Or are you enjoying the show as is? Jump down in the comments and let's discuss. In the meantime, never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.